Have you ever noticed that after being intimate with someone, you feel this sudden urge to retreat? You might want to stay in bed, avoid conversations, or just be alone with your thoughts. It's not just a random mood swing. There's actual science behind why this happens. Turns out, your brain and body are hardwired to make you less social after intimacy. And no, it's not about being a hermit or suddenly disliking the people around you. It's something much deeper, rooted in how your brain reacts chemically. So why does this happen? Why does a moment of closeness lead to feelings of distance and disinterest in socializing? In this video, we're diving into the surprising science of why you're less social after doing it, and how it's all backed by neuroscience. Stick around, because you'll be shocked by what's really going on inside your brain. Let's break it down, starting with how socializing isn't just a choice, it's something your brain needs to feel good. Socializing is more than just a choice, it's something deeply embedded in our biology. From the moment we're born, we're programmed to seek out connections with others. These interactions aren't just about passing the time or filling the space, they play a crucial role in how we survive and thrive. In fact, the need for social connection is so wired into our brains that it's tied to the very chemicals that drive our mood and motivation. Think of socializing as your brain's natural reward system in action. When we connect with others, our brain releases a cocktail of chemicals that make us feel good, keep us happy, and even motivate us to keep reaching out. The key players here are chemicals like dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. These substances aren't just about making you feel happy, they're also directly linked to how social interactions make us feel rewarding and fulfilling. Dopamine is often called the feel-good neurotransmitter, and it's released during pleasurable activities, everything from eating to exercise to, of course, socializing. Every time you meet someone new, enjoy a conversation, or share a laugh with a friend, your brain releases dopamine, reinforcing the idea that social interactions are something to seek out. Dopamine fuels the drive for more. It makes us crave social engagement because our brain remembers how good it felt last time. Then there's oxytocin, which has earned the nickname the bonding hormone. This chemical is released during positive social interactions, such as hugging, talking, or sharing intimate moments with someone. Oxytocin promotes feelings of trust, connection, and warmth. It's the reason why you feel closer to someone after spending time with them. It's the thickle that keeps relationships strong and encourages long-lasting bonds. From the first moments a baby is born, their brain begins producing oxytocin to form a bond with their caregivers. As we get older, oxytocin continues to play a huge role in forming and maintaining friendships, romantic relationships, and family bonds. It makes us feel connected to others in a way that's almost instinctual. And let's not forget serotonin, the chemical that regulates mood, happiness, and well-being. Serotonin has a big hand in stabilizing your mood and keeping you level-headed. When you're around people you care about, or when you're engaging in meaningful conversations, your serotonin levels rise, helping you feel grounded, calm, and satisfied. It's serotonin that helps you feel connected to others, ensuring that socializing isn't just about passing time but about truly feeling fulfilled in the process. These chemicals combine to form a system that drives you towards social connection. When you meet someone and enjoy their company, your brain rewards you with a flood of these chemicals, making you want to do it again and again. The more you socialize, the more these reward pathways are activated, leading you to develop a craving for social interactions. They don't just make you feel good in the moment, they motivate you to keep reaching out to others because in some ways your brain learns that socializing is vital for your well-being. But here's the twist. As much as our brain craves these connections and rewards, it also knows when it's time to pull back. And that's where things get a little complicated. After engaging in a positive social interaction, the brain can experience a kind of chemical shift. The surge of dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin is incredibly rewarding. But it doesn't last forever. In fact, your brain's natural response is to gradually reduce the production of these chemicals once the interaction ends. That's when you start feeling spent or ready to withdraw. It's not about the people around you or the social event itself. It's about the balance your brain tries to maintain. This is where the science of social withdrawal after intimacy starts to come into play. When you've been intimate with someone, whether through deep conversation or physical closeness, your brain goes into overdrive, releasing an even greater amount of these bonding chemicals, especially oxytocin. It's the brain's way of solidifying the connection, making you feel close, safe, and secure. But after this burst, there's a natural downturn, almost like a mini crash. Your brain's reward system, having been activated by the connection, now needs to recalibrate. The rapid decrease in oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin can create a sudden need to retreat. Your brain, after receiving such an intense high from bonding, now wants to pull back to restore balance. This can make you feel less interested in socializing after intimacy, even with people you care about. It's not that you don't want to be around others, it's that your brain has hit a temporary low point, and it needs time to recover. It's a natural, chemical process, but it's one that often gets overlooked when we think about why we feel like withdrawing after a close moment. We rarely stop to consider how much of our behavior is dictated by the neurochemical signals firing in our brains. This hormonal shift isn't just limited to physical intimacy. It can happen after any rewarding, emotionally charged social interaction. But in the case of physical intimacy, the brain is flooded with so much oxytocin and dopamine that the subsequent dip is more pronounced. Afterward, the brain needs to recalibrate, and the desire to connect socially often takes a back seat. It's not about avoiding people or being antisocial, it's simply a matter of the brain needing time to stabilize. What's even more interesting is how different people respond to this post-interaction dip. For some, it might be a subtle feeling of fatigue or a temporary disinterest in socializing. For others, the effect can be more profound, leading to a more significant withdrawal or feeling emotionally drained. This varies based on personality traits, emotional needs, and even attachment styles. People with more avoidant attachment styles may naturally gravitate toward more extended periods of social withdrawal, while others may feel more neutral about the downtime. But regardless of the degree, the pattern is the same. After a high, your brain needs time to recover. And that recovery phase often involves a temporary social retreat. That's the science of social withdrawal after intimacy. It's a delicate balance of chemicals and brain processes that dictate how connected or distant we feel after we've been close to someone. It's not about lack of interest or effort, it's about the brain's natural mechanisms kicking in, ensuring that we don't overextend ourselves socially. But here's the kicker. Once you understand this process, you realize that it's entirely possible to break out of this cycle. You don't have to give in to the social fatigue that comes after these intimate moments. With a little awareness, you can recognize these patterns and make choices that help you stay socially engaged even when your brain is asking for a break. But first, let's take a deeper look at the other factors at play here, because the science behind it goes even further than this. When we think about the act of doing it, most of us don't immediately associate it with social withdrawal. We often see it as an act that brings people closer together, deepens bonds, and fosters connection. And in many ways, it does. Physical intimacy, especially, triggers a cascade of chemicals in the brain that make us feel incredibly connected to our partner. But what happens afterward? Why do some of us feel like retreating, becoming suddenly distant or disinterested in socializing after being physically intimate? It turns out, this emotional and social withdrawal has its roots deep in neuroscience, particularly in how the brain reacts to the intense hormonal surge that occurs during intimacy. Let's start by looking at the key players involved. The hormones that surge during sex, oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, are often described as the feel-good chemicals. These are the same chemicals that make us feel elated, connected, and satisfied during moments of closeness. Oxytocin, for instance, is known as the bonding hormone. It plays a huge role in creating feelings of trust and affection, which is why you feel so emotionally connected to someone after being intimate with them. Dopamine, on the other hand, is the brain's reward system. It's what makes intimacy feel pleasurable. When dopamine floods the brain, it gives us that rush of pleasure, that sense of euphoria that makes us feel good about the experience. Serotonin, which is often called the happy hormone, also plays its part by stabilizing our mood and giving us a sense of well-being. When these chemicals flood the brain during intimacy, they work together to make the experience feel incredibly rewarding. They create a feeling of closeness, happiness, and contentment, which is exactly what we want when we connect with another person. The problem arises after the act is over. Once the flood of these chemicals begins to dissipate, something interesting happens in the brain. It's almost like your brain needs time to reset after the high. The surge of dopamine, oxytocin and serotonin can cause a sharp decline afterward, leaving you feeling drained or distant. That's when the desire to withdraw socially kicks in. This post-intimacy dip can leave you feeling emotionally spent, almost as if your brain has had its fill of bonding and connection for the time being. You may find yourself no longer interested in engaging with others, not just your partner, but also friends or family. In fact, it's common to feel less social after intimacy, as the brain signals that it needs time to recover from the intense emotional and physical release. And this isn't just a temporary mood, it's a real biological process that impacts how we interact with the world around us. So why does this happen? It's all about balance. When you engage in physical intimacy, your body releases a rush of feel-good chemicals, which make you feel close, happy, and connected. But once these chemicals start to taper off, the body experiences what some might describe as a crash. This is similar to what happens after you've eaten a large, satisfying meal. You might feel content at first, but eventually your body shifts into a more neutral state. The difference is, with intimacy, this shift can sometimes be more pronounced because of the intensity of the chemicals involved. This sudden drop in chemicals, especially in dopamine, can make you feel less interested in being social. Your brain's reward system has been activated and is now calming down, and as a result, your social energy may feel depleted. It's important to note that this feeling of withdrawal isn't just about laziness or lack of desire to be around others. It's a deeply ingrained biological response. After a burst of high-energy interaction, like intimacy, the brain needs time to rebalance. This is particularly true for those who are highly sensitive to changes in dopamine levels. After intimacy, the brain may prioritize recovery and emotional restoration, which naturally leads to a temporary disinterest in further social engagement. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. The brain's reaction to this post-intimacy dip can differ based on a variety of factors. For example, attachment style plays a significant role. Those with an avoidant attachment style, who tend to be more self-reliant and less likely to seek emotional support from others, might experience stronger feelings of withdrawal after intimacy. On the flip side, those with a more anxious attachment style might crave more closeness and connection after intimacy, but still feel emotionally exhausted, which creates a different dynamic altogether. These patterns of behavior are deeply connected to how our brains process intimacy and connection, further reinforcing the idea that social withdrawal after doing it is far from a random occurrence. It's rooted in how the brain processes intimacy, emotional fulfillment, and the subsequent need for emotional recovery. As fascinating as this might be, the real kicker is understanding how this post-intimacy retreat can affect our relationships and social lives. While it might seem like the most natural thing to do, retreat and rest after a deeply intimate experience, it can sometimes cause unintended friction in relationships. Your partner, who might have felt a surge of closeness, may not understand why you seem distant afterward. They might wonder if you're no longer interested in connecting or if something went wrong. This is where the importance of communication comes into play. Understanding that your brain is just resetting can help explain your behavior in these moments, and can encourage a more empathetic response from your partner. Instead of seeing the withdrawal as a personal rejection, they can recognize it as part of a biological process that everyone goes through after physical intimacy. Now let's circle back to the brain's neurochemistry. After the high of intimacy, the drop in dopamine and other feel-good chemicals leaves a void, making us less inclined to reach out and engage socially. For many, this means a desire to curl up alone, rest, or reflect quietly. This is a natural state, but it can also be leveraged for personal growth. By understanding how your brain responds to intimacy and social engagement, you can work with your body's natural rhythms rather than against them. This knowledge allows you to recognize when your social energy is low and to take proactive steps to recharge. Whether that's through alone time, light social interaction, or relaxation techniques, knowing why you feel less social after intimacy puts you in control of your emotional and social needs. Understanding this process can also help break the stigma associated with it. There's often a cultural expectation that after intimacy, you should be fully available and emotionally present for your partner, friends, or family. But as we've learned, this biological response is universal. It's not about ignoring people or not wanting to connect. It's about your brain's need to reset. This understanding can reduce feelings of guilt or frustration for those who find themselves pulling back after intimacy, knowing that their feelings of social withdrawal are simply part of the body's natural recovery process. In conclusion, the science behind why we feel less social after intimacy is grounded in how our brain processes emotions and rewards. The surge of chemicals that comes with intimacy doesn't just feel good, it's a way for the brain to reinforce social connections. But once the chemicals have done their job, the brain needs a break. This natural decline in dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin can lead to feelings of emotional exhaustion and social withdrawal. Understanding this process can help us navigate our social needs more effectively, communicate more openly with partners, and embrace our brain's natural rhythms without judgment. After experiencing the hormonal rush that comes with intimacy, it's not just the brain that is left to reset. The body, too, undergoes significant changes. In Section 2, we discussed how dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin create a high during social interactions. But what happens when that high dissipates? A major player in the aftermath of intimacy is prolactin, a hormone that is often overlooked in discussions about sexual behavior and its effects on our social lives. Prolactin's role, however, is crucial in understanding why we might feel more withdrawn or disconnected after engaging in intimate activities. While oxytocin and dopamine leave us feeling bonded and euphoric, prolactin is the hormone that essentially tells the body that it's time to rest and recover, and it plays a massive role in our ability to engage with others after intimacy. Prolactin is the hormone that regulates many things in the body, but its most significant role when it comes to intimacy is to inhibit further sexual arousal and decrease the desire for more activity. The surge of prolactin is why we often feel satisfied or even drowsy after sex. It's the body's way of signaling that intimacy has reached its peak and it's time to restore. However, the influence of prolactin isn't limited to just sexual behavior. It also plays a key role in our social interactions post-intimacy. When prolactin levels rise, it creates a sense of satiety. We feel satisfied, but also less interested in pursuing additional social engagement, particularly anything that would require a high level of emotional or physical investment. This is why, after intimacy, people often want to curl up and retreat, desiring less interaction or social stimulation. It's not about rejection, it's just a hormonal cue to step back, rest, and recover. Interestingly, prolactin is often associated with the feeling of emotional detachment or distance that can occur after sex. For some, this can feel like a sudden shift in energy, a disconnect from the person they were just intimate with. The feeling isn't one of dislike or disinterest, it's simply the body's biological response. While oxytocin makes us feel close and dopamine drives us to connect, prolactin brings us to a point of emotional neutrality, effectively pulling us away from social engagement. This hormonal shift can cause an abrupt transition from a state of deep connection to one of emotional withdrawal, which is a natural process that often goes unnoticed. Now consider how this hormonal shift affects not just romantic relationships but also friendships and family dynamics. The desire to retreat or disconnect post-intimacy isn't confined to romantic relationships alone. Even after a close conversation or bonding moment with a friend or family member, the body may release prolactin, signaling that it's time for a personal break. This can lead to moments where, after feeling emotionally fulfilled or connected, we feel the need to pull away. It's as if the body and brain go into a resting phase, preparing for the next interaction. For some people, especially those who have a tendency to be introverted or who have avoidant attachment styles, this hormonal response can be even more pronounced, making social withdrawal feel like a natural and necessary step. However, while prolactin and its effects are an important part of the equation, there's more to this story. The way people experience and respond to this post-intimacy hormonal shift can vary greatly depending on their individual psychological makeup. For example, those with more anxious attachment styles may still feel a desire for connection after intimacy, but they could also feel a sense of emptiness when they sense their partner pulling away or retreating. These feelings can trigger a cycle of anxiety and further withdrawal, complicating the natural hormonal response that prolactin creates. On the other hand, someone with an avoidant attachment style may experience less distress from this post-intimacy detachment. Instead, they may find comfort in the space and solitude that follows the intimacy, feeling relief from the need for constant social engagement. The variance in how prolactin and other hormones affect people emphasizes the complexity of the social withdrawal process. It's not just about the chemistry of hormones, but also about how those hormones interact with our emotional needs, past experiences, and relationship patterns. For example, if someone has experienced a history of emotional neglect or has an insecure attachment style, the rise in prolactin might trigger a sense of disconnection and reinforce fears of abandonment. In contrast, someone who feels secure in their relationships may take the post-intimacy withdrawal in stride, recognizing it as a normal, healthy need for personal space. This emotional complexity can lead to confusion or even tension in relationships. After an intimate experience, one partner may feel the natural pull of prolactin and retreat emotionally, while the other may feel anxious or confused by the sudden distance. For those who struggle with this hormonal shift, it can feel like an emotional roller coaster, one moment feeling close and bonded, and the next feeling a sense of coldness or distance. Recognizing the biological underpinnings of this behavior can help mitigate misunderstandings. Understanding that the pullback isn't a reflection of lack of interest or affection, but rather a biological reset, can ease the tension and help partners navigate their interactions more effectively. What's fascinating here is that prolactin and its effects don't just disappear with a single intimate encounter. The more often we experience physical or emotional intimacy, the more the body becomes accustomed to the rise and fall of these hormonal cycles. Over time, we can learn to manage these fluctuations and recognize when they're occurring. This awareness can lead to more balanced and fulfilling relationships, where both partners understand that the desire for space after intimacy isn't a rejection, but a natural, necessary response for emotional and physical recovery. The key to navigating prolactin's effect on social withdrawal is to recognize that it's just one part of a much larger biological and emotional picture. It's not just about the hormones, it's about understanding how our bodies and brains react to intimacy, how we process emotions, and how we can manage those emotions in a healthy way. This doesn't mean we have to give up our need for connection, but it does mean we can better manage our expectations and interactions post-intimacy. With this understanding, we can find ways to reconnect and nurture our relationships, while also giving ourselves the space we need to reset and recharge. So next time you find yourself pulling away after a close, intimate moment, remember that it's not just about avoiding others, it's a biological response driven by prolactin and other hormones that guide our emotional and social behavior. Recognizing this allows you to embrace it without guilt, and it opens the door to deeper, more empathetic connections with others. By understanding the science behind our social needs, we can approach intimacy and social engagement in a more mindful and balanced way, strengthening our relationships and fostering healthier, more rewarding social lives. After we've experienced the high of physical intimacy, it's natural to feel a shift, a sense of withdrawal, as we've discussed. But there's more to this than just hormones or biology. There's a psychological element at play here that often goes unnoticed: the emotional toll that intimacy can take, especially after the initial rush has worn off. This emotional fallout is often what keeps people from engaging socially or seeking out more connections after being intimate. Whether it's a romantic partner, a close friend, or even a family member, intimacy can bring up deep feelings that you may not expect, leading to a desire for emotional space. While the hormonal shifts play a significant role, the psychological aftermath of intimacy cannot be overlooked. When we engage with someone intimately, whether through conversation or physical connection, we're not just sharing our bodies, we're sharing our emotions, vulnerabilities, and a part of our sense of self. This connection is incredibly powerful, but it also leaves us exposed. When the connection fades, the emotional weight of being so close to someone can sometimes feel overwhelming. We may suddenly realize just how vulnerable we've become, and the natural response is often to pull away. The vulnerability that intimacy exposes can feel uncomfortable for some, especially for those who have experienced emotional hurt in the past. For others, the sudden realization of how deeply we've connected with someone can cause anxiety, as if the emotional closeness is too much to maintain. This feeling of vulnerability after intimacy is heightened by the fact that physical closeness triggers something profound in the brain: a sense of attachment. When we share intimate moments, especially those involving trust, the brain releases hormones that reinforce our feelings of attachment and bonding, like oxytocin and serotonin, While these hormones make us feel more connected, they also make us feel more tied to the other person. This can be both comforting and unsettling. It's comforting because it builds trust and emotional safety, but it can also lead to anxiety, particularly if we're unsure how the other person feels, or if we're concerned about how vulnerable we've become. As we start to pull back emotionally after intimacy, we might feel a sense of loss. The connection that felt so strong now feels distant. The desire to withdraw socially often comes from a fear of getting too attached, especially if we're not sure where the relationship stands. This can trigger insecurity or a need to regain emotional independence. The shift from closeness to distance can feel jarring, and in trying to recover, we might withdraw from social situations altogether, fearing that further interaction will only deepen that emotional bond and make us feel more exposed. The withdrawal that follows intimacy can also be rooted in the need for emotional self-preservation. Many people fear that by becoming too attached or too emotionally invested in someone, they risk losing themselves. They might feel like they're giving away too much, and pulling back is a way of regaining control over their emotions. It's almost as though the mind goes into self-protection mode after the rawness of intimacy, creating a barrier between oneself and others. The brain's need for emotional distance after the intensity of bonding allows us to recalibrate, to regain a sense of individuality before diving back into social engagements. In some cases, this withdrawal is a form of emotional healing. After being deeply connected with someone, especially in a vulnerable and intimate way, the need for solitude can be a natural response. Intimacy, while often rewarding, can also be emotionally draining. When we share our deepest selves, we expose our most authentic emotions, and that kind of exposure requires time to process. During this time, we may feel disconnected from others, as we turn inward, focusing on personal reflection and recovery. This time alone allows the brain to stabilize its emotional state and process the bond that was created. And during this period of recalibration, we often retreat from socializing to regain emotional equilibrium. This emotional recalibration is vital for mental health, but it can often be misunderstood by others. When someone withdraws after intimacy, the assumption may be that they're disinterested, upset, or simply not emotionally available. This can lead to confusion, especially in romantic relationships, where one partner may feel neglected or rejected after a close, intimate moment. However, understanding that this withdrawal is a natural psychological response can change the way we approach such situations. Instead of interpreting the silence as disinterest or rejection, it can be seen as a necessary break for emotional recovery. It's a signal that the individual needs space to reflect, heal, and regain their emotional balance before re-engaging with others. The psychological need for distance after intimacy also highlights the importance of self-awareness. When we understand the emotional toll that intimacy takes on us and recognize the need to withdraw and process, we can avoid creating unnecessary tension in our relationships. It's important to communicate with others about these feelings of withdrawal, as this can foster greater understanding and reduce any feelings of insecurity or confusion. Simply explaining that we need time to regain emotional balance after intimacy can help set realistic expectations, leading to healthier, more fulfilling connections in the long run. So when you find yourself pulling back after an intimate experience, recognize that this isn't just about hormones or the physical aftermath. It's about emotional vulnerability, attachment, and the need to protect your emotional well-being. This response is as much a part of the human experience as the desire to connect in the first place. By acknowledging and respecting this natural withdrawal, both for yourself and those around you, you can foster stronger, more authentic relationships. Understanding that intimacy comes with both emotional highs and lows can help you navigate these moments with greater compassion and awareness, ensuring that you can reconnect with others in a meaningful way when you're ready. We've explored how hormones and emotional vulnerability play a huge role in why we feel less social after intimacy. But there's another significant factor at play that we haven't yet discussed: how the dynamics of self-perception and self-worth influence our behavior following intimate moments. After being deeply connected with someone, whether emotionally or physically, it's common to experience a shift in how we view ourselves, and this shift often has a direct impact on how we engage socially afterward. Understanding the connection between self-esteem and social withdrawal is key to unlocking the mystery of why intimacy can make us retreat. After an intimate moment, we often undergo a subtle, sometimes unconscious evaluation of ourselves. We might reflect on how we looked, how we acted, or even how we felt during the interaction. This self-reflection can lead to a range of emotional responses. If the experience was positive, it can reinforce our sense of self-worth, making us feel more confident, connected, and secure in our relationships. But for many people, this self-evaluation isn't always so straightforward. It can bring up feelings of insecurity, self-doubt, or even guilt. These negative emotions can cause us to retreat socially, not because we don't want to connect with others, but because we feel vulnerable, exposed, or unsure of ourselves. One key reason why intimacy often leads to social withdrawal is that it forces us to confront our own insecurities. For example, someone who has low self-esteem may struggle to feel good about themselves after being intimate with someone. They may feel like they were not good enough during the experience, or wonder whether they are truly worthy of the affection or connection that intimacy creates. This insecurity can make them feel disconnected from the very people they're closest to, causing them to retreat emotionally. They may feel a heightened need to recharge in isolation, distancing themselves from others until they feel better about themselves again. This phenomenon isn't limited to physical intimacy alone. Even emotionally intimate moments can stir up similar feelings of insecurity or self-doubt. In fact, some people may feel even more vulnerable after a deep emotional connection than after physical intimacy, because it's not just about the body but the soul. When we allow ourselves to open up emotionally, to share our true selves with another person, we expose ourselves in ways that can be uncomfortable. This emotional exposure can lead to a sense of uncertainty or fear about how we are perceived, and that can cause us to retreat socially as we try to process and manage these emotions. The role of self-perception in social withdrawal after intimacy can be complicated further by the way society defines attractiveness, value, and worth. In a world where appearance and performance are often given so much weight, many people tie their self-worth to how they are perceived during intimate encounters. If they don't meet their own standards, or feel as though they haven't lived up to societal expectations, it can trigger a cycle of negative self-talk. They may feel that they're not attractive enough, not desirable enough, or not good enough in some way. This kind of self-criticism can drive them to isolate themselves, not because they don't want to interact, but because they don't want others to see the flaws they've just identified in themselves. This pattern is especially prevalent in people who struggle with perfectionism. If they've set impossibly high standards for themselves, any perceived mistake or shortcoming during intimacy can trigger a sense of failure. For example, if someone feels that they weren't as responsive as they wanted to be, or that they didn't meet the expectations of their partner, they may retreat afterward to avoid confronting these feelings of inadequacy. This can lead to a prolonged period of social withdrawal, as they isolate themselves not just from others but from the very aspects of themselves that they fear are flawed. This can also lead to feelings of loneliness even when surrounded by others, because they feel disconnected from themselves and their own sense of worth. However, this type of social withdrawal, driven by self-perception, doesn't necessarily have to be permanent. It's important to recognize that these feelings are temporary, and the self-doubt and insecurities that arise after intimacy don't define who we are. What's crucial here is the ability to challenge and reframe negative thoughts about ourselves. Once we acknowledge that our worth is not determined by a single moment or by how we perform in intimate situations, we can begin to heal the emotional wounds that lead to social withdrawal. The key to overcoming this challenge is self-compassion. Learning to be kind to ourselves and accepting that vulnerability is a natural part of intimacy can go a long way in breaking the cycle of self-criticism. When we can view ourselves with kindness and recognize that imperfection is a part of being human, we can begin to rebuild our sense of worth and connection with others. Instead of retreating socially, we can embrace intimacy as an opportunity for growth, learning, and self-discovery. And when we do experience moments of self-doubt, we can remind ourselves that these feelings don't have to control our actions or our interactions with others. Another important aspect of self-perception is recognizing the role of validation. Many people look to others for validation after intimate experiences, seeking reassurance that they are loved, desirable, and worthy. When this validation isn't immediately forthcoming, they may retreat in an attempt to process their emotions alone. This is a natural reaction, as intimacy often stirs up deep feelings of need and desire for affirmation. However, relying on external validation alone can lead to a cycle of emotional dependency, where we seek social connection solely to boost our self-esteem. The key to breaking free from this cycle is to learn to validate ourselves, independent of others' opinions or responses. Self-validation comes from within. It's about accepting ourselves as we are, acknowledging our worth, without needing constant reassurance from others. This self-acceptance is crucial for breaking the cycle of social withdrawal. When we don't need external validation to feel good about ourselves, we are free to engage with others in a healthy, balanced way. This doesn't mean we should stop seeking connection or intimacy. It means that we should learn to connect with others from a place of inner security, rather than from a place of emotional neediness. At the end of the day, the social withdrawal that often follows intimacy is deeply tied to our sense of self. The way we perceive ourselves, our worth, and our need for validation shapes how we engage with others after intimate moments. By fostering self-compassion, learning to self-validate, and challenging negative self-talk, we can break the pattern of social withdrawal and embrace intimacy and connection in a more healthy, balanced way. It's not about retreating from others, but about recognizing and addressing the emotional dynamics at play within ourselves. By understanding and navigating these inner emotional landscapes, we can foster stronger, more meaningful connections with both ourselves and to people we care about. As we've explored, there are numerous biological, psychological, and emotional reasons why intimacy can lead to social withdrawal. But here's the million-dollar question. How can we break the cycle? If intimacy often leaves you feeling disconnected, distant, or simply too tired to engage socially, is there a way to prevent these feelings from becoming a permanent roadblock in your relationships and social life? The good news is, yes, there are concrete strategies that you can apply to stay connected with others, even after the post-intimacy slump. Understanding these strategies can be key to helping you maintain your emotional balance, keep your social life active, and prevent intimacy from becoming something that isolates you rather than connects you. One of the most effective ways to combat post-intimacy withdrawal is to engage in what's known as mindful recovery. This is all about becoming more aware of how you feel after intimate moments and giving yourself permission to take a step back, not in a way that shuts others out, but in a way that allows you to reset your emotional and physical state. Essentially, it's about respecting the natural process that your body and brain are going through after intimacy, and then finding ways to ease through it without pushing yourself into isolation. For many people, the first step is simply acknowledging that what they're feeling is natural. The hormonal surges and emotional shifts that occur after intimacy aren't something to feel ashamed of or try to rush through. They're a part of being human. By acknowledging this natural dip in social energy, you free yourself from the pressure of feeling like you should always be on or always be social. Instead of beating yourself up for needing space, you can approach it with self-compassion and understanding. Knowing that it's okay to feel withdrawn after being intimate can help release the anxiety or guilt that often accompanies the desire to retreat. Mindful recovery also involves recognizing that the need for space after intimacy doesn't have to mean cutting off all contact with others. Instead of isolating yourself completely, you can choose to engage in lower-energy social activities that don't require the same level of emotional output. For instance, you could take a walk with a friend, engage in a light conversation with someone, or spend time with a pet. These activities allow you to maintain connection without draining your social battery too quickly. The goal here isn't to avoid interaction altogether, but to pace yourself and find a balance between intimacy and social engagement. Another effective strategy for staying socially connected post-intimacy is to establish clear and healthy boundaries. Often we withdraw socially after intimacy because we're afraid of overextending ourselves emotionally or physically. We fear becoming too attached or too vulnerable, and so we retreat. However, by setting boundaries, you're allowing yourself to engage with others in a way that feels comfortable. This can involve communicating with your partner or friends about your needs after intimacy, explaining that you might need some time to process or relax without feeling disconnected. Setting these boundaries doesn't mean pushing people away. It simply means that you're giving yourself the space to recharge so that you can engage fully when you're ready. It's also crucial to remember that intimacy doesn't have to be followed by withdrawal every time. You can cultivate a mindset that allows you to shift your focus after intimacy and re-engage with others in a healthy way. One approach is to practice what's called reframing, a technique in which you change your perspective on the post-intimacy experience. Instead of seeing the natural need for recovery as something to dread, you can view it as an opportunity for growth. You can frame it as a moment to reconnect with yourself, recharge, and then return to your social circle with a renewed sense of energy. This shift in mindset can help you see post-intimacy withdrawal as a positive, restorative process rather than a negative, isolating one. In addition to mindful recovery and reframing, engaging in regular self-care practices can help reduce the emotional and physical toll that intimacy takes on you. When we take care of our bodies and minds, we strengthen our resilience to stress, emotional burnout, and social exhaustion. Exercise, meditation, and proper rest are foundational to emotional health and can help you navigate the emotional ups and downs that follow intimate moments. For example, yoga or stretching can help release any tension in your body, allowing you to feel more relaxed and centered. Similarly, engaging in mindfulness practices can help you stay grounded in the present moment, preventing you from being overwhelmed by negative thoughts or feelings of isolation. A great way to combine both mindfulness and self-care is through journaling. Writing down your thoughts and feelings after intimacy can be an excellent way to process emotions without immediately withdrawing from the world. Journaling allows you to reflect on the experience in a constructive way, without the need to engage in lengthy or draining conversations with others. It helps you organize your thoughts, identify any emotional triggers, and understand why you might feel the way you do. In some cases, journaling can also help you identify patterns in your behavior, allowing you to see when you're withdrawing more than usual and why it might be happening. Another useful tactic for staying social and connected is to practice positive affirmations and self-talk. Often, the emotional withdrawal that follows intimacy can be tied to negative self-perceptions. We may feel guilty, insecure, or self-critical, which leads us to retreat emotionally. By practicing affirmations, positive self-empowering statements that remind you of your worth, you can counteract these negative feelings. For instance, you could say to yourself, "It's okay to need space. It doesn't mean I'm rejecting anyone," or "My need for rest is normal and healthy." Over time, these affirmations can help shift your mindset and make social withdrawal less of a default response. Building a strong support system can also make a huge difference in how you navigate social withdrawal. Surrounding yourself with people who understand your needs and who respect your space can create a sense of comfort and security. These people will recognize when you need time to recharge and will support your emotional well-being without pushing you to engage before you're ready. Whether it's close friends, family, or a supportive partner, having a network of people who truly understand you can help you feel less isolated during periods of social withdrawal. Finally, don't underestimate the power of self-compassion in the process of reconnecting with others. Being kind to yourself during times of social withdrawal is essential. It's easy to fall into the trap of feeling like you're failing or letting people down when you don't feel socially engaged after intimacy. But it's important to recognize that everyone goes through phases of emotional and social ebb and flow. The key is to allow yourself the grace to rest, recover, and then re-enter social situations when you feel ready. It's not about forcing yourself to be constantly on. It's about recognizing the need for balance, honoring your emotions, and returning to your social world when you feel centered and at peace. Breaking the cycle of post-intimacy withdrawal is possible with the right tools and mindset. By practicing mindful recovery, setting healthy boundaries, reframing your experience, engaging in self-care, and building a supportive network, you can maintain meaningful connections without feeling emotionally depleted. The key is understanding that social withdrawal doesn't have to be permanent, and with the right strategies, you can navigate these moments with grace, ensuring that your relationships remain strong, healthy, and fulfilling. Now that we've explored the complexities of why intimacy can lead to social withdrawal, it's clear that this experience is not just about wanting to be alone. Instead, it's a natural, multifaceted response involving everything from our brain chemistry to our emotional vulnerabilities and self-perception. The hormonal shifts we experience post-intimacy, particularly the release of dopamine, oxytocin, and prolactin, play a major role in how we feel after a deeply connected moment with another person. These chemicals can create feelings of satisfaction and emotional bonding, but as they diminish, we often find ourselves retreating, not because we want to push people away, but because our bodies and brains need time to recalibrate. Additionally, our need for personal space in emotional recovery is shaped by the psychological and emotional toll that intimacy takes. Vulnerability, attachment, and self-reflection all contribute to the emotional withdrawal we sometimes feel. But the truth is, this feeling doesn't have to be permanent. With awareness and understanding, we can break the cycle of social withdrawal and use the natural rhythm of post-intimacy recovery to our advantage. It's not about denying our need for rest or space. It's about learning how to navigate these moments mindfully and with self-compassion. By recognizing that the desire to retreat after intimacy is a biological and psychological response, we give ourselves permission to take the time we need without guilt. But more importantly, we allow ourselves to return to our social circles and relationships when we're ready, without feeling like we failed or missed out. One of the first steps in this process is understanding that our feelings of detachment are normal, not an indication of a flaw in ourselves or our relationships. The hormonal and emotional shifts that happen after intimacy aren't something we can control, but they are something we can learn to manage. By acknowledging this, we remove the pressure that so often comes with the expectation that we should always be social and engaged, regardless of how we feel. It's important to recognize that the space we need after intimacy is not about rejecting others. It's about taking care of ourselves so that we can re-engage with the world in a healthy and balanced way. Another essential component in breaking the cycle of withdrawal is practicing mindful recovery. When we give ourselves permission to feel what we feel without judgment, we create an environment for emotional recovery that's grounded in self-awareness. Mindful recovery is about taking a step back, noticing the emotions that arise, and giving ourselves the grace to experience them without pushing ourselves too hard. Instead of seeing the desire for space as something to avoid or ignore, we can embrace it as a natural part of our emotional process. This isn't about isolating ourselves, but about giving ourselves permission to pause and reset. Whether it's through journaling, meditation, or simply sitting quietly with our thoughts, mindful recovery helps us reconnect with our emotional center, allowing us to come back to our relationships when we're ready. Setting healthy boundaries is also a powerful tool for staying connected without feeling overwhelmed. Often, we retreat socially because we don't feel equipped to engage on an emotional level, or we fear that further interaction will drain us. But boundaries allow us to take control of how we engage with others. We don't have to disappear completely or hide away. Instead, we can communicate our need for space while still maintaining our connections. Healthy boundaries allow us to say, "I need some time to recharge," without feeling guilty or distant. They provide a framework for engaging in relationships that is rooted in self-respect and emotional honesty. Perhaps one of the most transformative tools we can use to combat social withdrawal is reframing our experience. When we view the need for recovery as something negative, something to be ashamed of, or avoided, we reinforce the idea that there's something wrong with us. But by reframing these moments as opportunities for growth and self-care, we shift our mindset. We begin to see the need for personal space as a sign of emotional strength, not weakness. We recognize that we are taking care of ourselves in the same way that we take care of our physical health. Just as we wouldn't run a marathon without proper rest and nutrition, we shouldn't expect ourselves to constantly be emotionally available without the time to recover. Self-compassion plays a crucial role in this reframing process. It's easy to be hard on ourselves after intimacy, especially if we feel like we've let someone down or failed to meet expectations. We might think that our withdrawal reflects something negative about us, that we're being selfish or distant. But self-compassion allows us to give ourselves the kindness and understanding we need to navigate these moments. It's about acknowledging that our needs are valid, that we deserve to take a break, and that our emotional well-being matters. Self-compassion encourages us to treat ourselves with the same kindness that we would offer a friend who's going through a similar experience. When we approach intimacy and social withdrawal with self-compassion and mindfulness, we can start to understand that these feelings are temporary, not a reflection of who we are as individuals. We can begin to see them as part of the natural ebb and flow of emotional and social connection. Just as we need time to recharge physically, we also need time to emotionally process and recover. And when we give ourselves that time, we'll be able to re-engage with others in a way that feels authentic and fulfilling. Another way to break the cycle of withdrawal is by building a support system of people who understand your needs and respect your space. Having people in your life who know that you might need time to recharge after intimacy can make a world of difference. This support system allows you to be open about your feelings without fear of judgment. When we feel understood and supported by those around us, it makes it easier to engage socially when we're ready. It also removes the shame that often accompanies social withdrawal, replacing it with empathy and compassion. Ultimately, the goal isn't to force ourselves to be constantly available or to avoid retreating after intimacy altogether. It's about finding balance. It's about understanding that intimacy is not just about bonding, but also about processing emotions, managing our energy, and taking care of ourselves. It's about embracing the natural need for rest and recovery, and creating a space where we can engage with others in a way that feels healthy, balanced, and authentic. So, if you've ever found yourself pulling away after intimacy, remember that it's not a sign that something's wrong with you or your relationships. It's a natural response, and with the right tools and strategies, you can learn to manage it. By practicing mindful recovery, setting boundaries, reframing your experience, and cultivating self-compassion, you can maintain deep connections with others while honoring your emotional needs. Intimacy doesn't have to be something that isolates you. It can be a source of growth, self-discovery, and deeper connection with the people who matter most. In the end, understanding why we feel the way we do after intimacy and knowing how to navigate those feelings is key to creating healthier, more fulfilling relationships. It's not about avoiding the withdrawal, but about learning how to work with it, giving ourselves the time we need to recharge, and coming back stronger, more connected, and more emotionally available when the time is right. By embracing this process with compassion and mindfulness, we can break the cycle of social withdrawal and build deeper, more meaningful relationships that nurture our emotional well-being.